the last session. That's why you're uploading, right? So hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us this Saturday evening, and welcome to the final session of this year's forum. This year, we are especially happy and proud to be joined again by an extraordinary community of students and members of the academia. For this last session, we turned directly to the students. We invited them to co-curate this session by sending us their questions on any topic they care about. We read every single submission, selected 6 questions, and paired each one with one of our featured speakers. So you're now about to attend a session sparked and curated by students. They come from schools of journalism, media, communication, public policy, and more in Greece, across Europe, the US, and Asia. They have traveled here from a remarkable range of institutions, namely Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, Chatham House, Columbia University, Comenius University, Ionian University, National and Capodistrian University of Athens, Pantheon University, and universities of California, Berkeley, Delaware, Hong Kong, Lisbon, Pennsylvania, and Western Macedonia. Is any of them around? If you are around, raise your hands. They will applaud again. Yeah, applaud again. So in a moment, our speakers will take the stage to explore these questions and to help us all navigate the age of doubt, together with those who might doubt the most, young people and tomorrow's journalists. I promised earlier we selected 6 questions, but we now miss Erin Reilly, the founding director at Texas Immersive Institute, who was about to answer one, but Erin was not able to finally be with us tonight. But I really want to read the question a student submitted, and she was to answer because it was one of my favorites. And I want to call you reflect on this and probably discuss it over the drinks. Immersive storytelling can enhance empathy, but where should we draw the line between emotional impact and ethical responsibility, especially when reporting on trauma or vulnerable communities? And one last thing we should admit, just to be honest with you, questions about AI were a lot. We selected just one, but we put it first. But I wanted you to know that there is a millennial touch in this. So with no further delay, let the round of lightning talks start.
Hi, everybody. My name's Charlie Beckett from the LSE. I run the Journalism AI project, so I'm thrilled that there have been so many questions about AI. This one asks, what is the most significant change, positive or negative, that AI has brought to the newsroom, and how will AI shape journalism in the year ahead? So I've got an hour, right? Yeah, okay. I think the most significant change that AI has brought already is that we are talking about it a lot, and we've had some brilliant presentations raising all sorts of aspects. The best bit, though, is we are talking about our journalism, and we're talking about the fundamentals, because AI, as you've heard, it's a great competition for traditional journalism. In some ways, it's a threat. It could undermine both journalism and the information ecosystem. And it's also amazingly powerful and capable. So everyone is thinking, will it do what I used to do as a journalist? So it's really making us think, what is good about our journalism? Why should it survive? Not just to keep your job, but what is the value of it? What is the journalism doing? We just had a presentation on journalism that's doing things that AI can't do right now. And indeed, do people value it enough to support and sustain it in the future? So I think that's the most significant change that's happened because of AI in the last year, 2 years. How will it shape journalism in the year ahead? You probably know better than I do, because if you're out there actually working in a newsroom, you can see what it's doing, and perhaps you're now thinking about it and talking about it with your colleagues, and you are thinking, I have this problem. Can AI solve it? Or here's the thing I would really like to do. Can AI be part of that solution? Can it be more effective, more efficient? Can it help me be more creative? And you will find that when you experiment or when you start to use it next year, it will make mistakes. You will get things wrong. It won't be able to do things quite as well as you hoped it might. And then the worst thing is then to stop trying, because you will also find that it does do things that save you time, that make you more effective, that make you more efficient and makes your journalism better. But do not expect the results to be either all positive or either all negative. The last thing I wanted to say is, I know that next year there are going to be some really exciting tools being used in newsrooms. And that's because we've been working with 35 newsrooms on our Innovation Challenge, where they have been developing systems to help them to secure better funding and sustainability, to help them do reversioning and reformatting, and also to help them to fight misinformation. And so they have now got those tools, and they are going to be using them next year, and I hope that they will inspire a lot of other people to do the same. Wonderful tools. One, a live fact-checking tool, where people will be able to assess the validity of what somebody's saying while they're saying it. Another wonderful one in the Middle East, where they built a chatbot that is going to give sexual advice in Arabic to Arabic women. Another lovely one that I've really thrilled about is a Ukrainian news organization who have built an avatar of one of their journalists. And of course, everyone thinks that's a terrible thing to do, because we want real human journalists. Why have they done it? They've done it because he's been called up. He's been mobilized for the war against Russia, and they want to keep him on their website, communicating with their readers. So it's a wonderful example of how you can use AI to actually affirm your human journalism and to keep those connections with the audience. So that's what I think we'll all be doing next year. We'll all be using far more AI tools, partly because there'll be somebody else in your newsroom or in another newsroom who has found something that does work. So I hope you enjoy it, I hope you do it creatively, and I hope you tell me when things go right. Thanks very much.
Hello everyone, my name is Tamás Bodoky, I'm journalist and director and co-founder of Atlatszó.hu, which is a small non-profit for investigative journalism in Hungary. So my question is, what lessons can the US learn from countries where press freedom clashes with autocratic governments? So the very short answer is, for journalists, that prepare to become public enemy number one, prepare to become political players, and not because of you want to do that, but because of the attitude of the government will force you into this position. Our Prime Minister learned in a very early point of time that, or he thinks that media is his enemy. He was already in power between 1989 and 2002, and he blamed the media, the left liberal media, for losing that election in 2002. And already from 2010 to 2002 to 2010, he started to build an alternative media system totally controlled by his party. and started to talk exclusively to this controlled media. And at the same time, he started to treat other media as hostile political actors and denying the status of journalism to independent media. This escalated quickly when he came to power. He started to, and his oligarchs started to buy themselves into media companies. They occupied state-run media and changed all the journalists there to party loyalists, and basically built a huge media system which serves exclusively their goal. We don't even call them journalists anymore because it's a big propaganda machine. But from the government's viewpoint, that is Hungarian media, and independent journalists and independent media is not part of the media system. They started to label us like foreign agents or foreign funded, serving foreign interests, so try to discredit our work in the eyes of the general public. And they try to conceal information, not to share, not to answer questions, and this whole thing escalated to a point where they established a so-called Sovereignty Protection Office, which is a state-run authority, which has a task to blacklist organizations who criticize the government, who report independently on Hungarian affairs. So what can the US learn from this? I think that journalists must be very aware that their status will be challenged. They will face hostile rhetoric. They have to find audiences, local audiences, who support them strongly, because the key to survival of independent media in Hungary right now is that those who don't agree with the policies and views of the government, those realize that independent media is very important to keep the independent media alive, and therefore we get a lot of support from these people. So you need to find these audiences, and also you need to prepare for personal attacks. So I myself was portrayed as a Soros agent and all kind of or traitor. In the leading Hungarian daily, they called me a treacherous mercenary, foreign mercenary, or something like this. So when you first hear this, it hits very hard. But when it goes on for 10 years, then you get used to it, and you can just ignore it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bruce Shapiro. I direct the Global Center for Journalism and Trauma, gcjt.org, a project that helps both with reporting on people who have survived violence and crisis and tragedy, and that deals with our well-being as journalists when we do those stories. How can journalists responsibly report on conflicts, genocides, or global tensions while protecting their own safety and mental health? First of all, I'd propose to you that taking care of your physical safety, attending to physical safety, attending to psychological well-being, should be as central to your reporting toolkit as verifying facts, as checking quotes, as editing video. Why? If you're injured or dead, you can't report, you can't be there for the story. If you are sidelined by burnout, by post-traumatic stress, by other psychological injury, you are censored as effectively as if arrested. Physical safety and psychological safety and digital safety are all essential to the practice of journalism today. Secondly, it's not especially complicated. It starts not while you're on the most difficult assignments or in the most danger or dealing with the gravest tragedy. It's how you manage your work and your life every day. Are you engaged in restorative external activity? Getting out in nature, running, listening to music, being with your family, doing whatever it is that nourishes you when you're absorbing a lot of content? Are you getting trained in basic safety, how to protect yourself online, how to manage crowds, all of those sorts of things? If you do that in the everyday, when you find yourself in the midst of a physically challenging or abusive harassment situation or in the middle of a psychologically distressing story, you'll be in much better shape. Third, I think it's very important to think in 3 phases when you really are facing the most difficult stories: before, during, and after. Sit down with a colleague, sit down with your newsroom. Before, what kinds of training, resources, knowledge, planning can make this story, this project, this assignment a little more manageable. During, how will I get fed? How will I stay hydrated? Will I get enough sleep? Who are my buddies? How will we communicate? All that sort of thing. After, what's my support system? Who will I talk to? Before, during, and after. Physical safety, digital safety, psychological safety, that BDA model is really helpful. And finally, it's absolutely crucial to not do this alone. The one thing we know from studies of journalists all over the world is that trusting collegial support, peer support, is the single most important resilience factor for journalists. It keeps you safe, it keeps you psychologically sound. Social isolation is the biggest risk factor for psychological injury like burnout or PTSD. So think about buddy systems, think about teams, think about staying in touch with your managers, think about staying in touch with your mentors. Don't try to do this alone. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Flutura Kusari. I am a senior legal advisor at the European Center for Press and Media Freedom. Before I answer to this question, how can journalism stay true when legal systems are weaponized to silence critical voices, I have 2 questions. Please raise your hand if it's a yes. How many of you have heard of foreign agent laws? How many of you have heard of SLAPPs? Good. Bad, but good. So Europe is considered, or was considered for a long time, a very safe continent. But in the last 10 years, we've seen assassination of journalists. We've seen hundreds of physical attacks against journalists. And we as civil society are vocal about it. We fight for justice. We help journalists when we can. We speak on their behalf. We offer practical advice and support and whatnot. But what is happening recently is that legal procedures, legislation, administrative procedures are used as a new way of going against media outlets, media organizations, and journalists. And I'll talk very briefly about foreign agent laws as a new way to attack media outlets and structures, and SLAPPs, how they are used to silence journalists. Foreign agent laws are laws that were initially introduced by Putin. But you know, these authoritarian politicians, they compete with each other who is copying more faster these methods to suppress media freedom. So what we saw in 2012 in Russia is now being replicated in several countries in Europe, meaning having politicians introducing foreign agent laws, which they do in the name of transparency in fundings of civil society and media. But in fact, what they want is to control them, is they want to stigmatize them, because if you receive fundings, international fundings in countries when there are foreign agent laws, you need to register as a foreign agent. And that creates a perception publicly that you're serving to foreign interests, usually against the interest of your country. And that makes these media outlets and NGOs look like as they are working against the public interest of their own country. And that's why they're being quite effective. With this type of laws, politicians are going against the structures that basically help us being informed. Whereas SLAPs, strategic lawsuits against public participation, are baseless lawsuits which are filed against journalists and activists for the only reason because those who are subject to their reporting, activism, and whatnot, they don't like it. So the only way for them to cope is to send journalists to a court, to make them invest time, money, and energy on defending something that they did properly. And as a result, this discourages journalism, especially investigative journalists. We have cases when journalists went 30 times in court, and the case has not started yet. We have a case in Albania, and we have hundreds of cases around Europe. Now, there is a solution for SLAPs, and I am more hopeful than I was 5 years ago, because civil society managed successfully to convince Council of Europe and the European Commission to pass legislation so that when, and I'll simplify for non-lawyers, the European legislation means that when a case is filed against a journalist and the judge can see clearly, based on some indicators, that it's a SLAP, the judge will dismiss the case very quickly. That's why it's very important to put pressure on your governments to pass anti-SLAP legislation. On foreign agent laws, it's more difficult. Why? Because we're being very slow in responding to foreign agent laws. It took 10 years to the European Court of Human Rights, a court that I very much respect, to solve a case which was related with foreign agent law in Russia. And there are no discussions at European level how to find a solution. I'll conclude by saying that journalists can do much still. It's very difficult. We're having new ways of going against journalists, new trends, but journalists can do several things. First and foremost, don't check facts. Don't double check. Please triple check facts. Keep good recordings of your data, sources, documents, because when you go to courtrooms, and I monitor a lot of courtrooms across Europe, you are most of the time alone. Not even your colleagues come to the court, not because they don't want to, because they don't have the time. So please protect yourself by triple checking facts and by keeping good records. Get in touch with lawyers. Create connections. In some countries, there are a lot of pro bono lawyers. When they are not, come to us. Media Freedom Rapid Response can help you, and we have many projects, many civil society across Europe helping journalists. And finally, please speak up when you are slapped, and do not listen to lawyers who say shut up. The best protection you have is the public, so please speak up. Thank you.
All right, we've got an interesting question here. So the question is, with TikTok and other social media now a main source of news, how can we engage younger audiences beyond short-lived infotainment to spark a deeper interest in being informed? I should introduce myself. I'm Tani. I'm the media editor at Semaphore, where I write about the changing media landscape, and I'm also the co-host of the Mixed Signals podcast. Please subscribe. But this is a really, really interesting question. And the first thing I want to do is I want to address it directly. And the second thing I want to do is I want to push back on it a little bit. So in agreeing and addressing it directly, I think the most obvious thing to do is to meet people where they are. I was on a panel yesterday with Pew, which talked about how a lot of people, especially young people, were increasingly getting their news from TikTok, which, as a person who loves reading, I thought was a little bit depressing. But I think it's actually, I think it's really important to get excited about the possibilities of these new platforms and the audiences, the new audiences who are there, who might have been bored by like an old school evening newscast or might not have ever wanted to read a long form magazine article, but actually are interested in a funny, interesting short clip that's on TikTok. I think that there are a lot of really interesting US news organizations that have really cool and experimental, interesting TikToks. I'm sure if you guys are on the platform and you're into news, you've seen some of them. Morning Brew has one, which is really good at breaking down interesting financial news in a really funny and interesting way. Planet Money also has a great TikTok where they do a very similar thing. The Washington Post had a TikTok account. It was actually like their most popular social account by far, where they broke down the news of the day in this way. And, an old school stodgy journalist might say, well, that's not necessarily journalism, blah, blah, blah. But I actually think it really informs the public and it informs young people in an interesting way and it does get them excited. The second thing that I wanted to do is to push back a little bit because the most popular social platform at the moment is YouTube. I'm sure every single person in this room has spent a moderate to alarming amount of time on YouTube probably over the last few years. And YouTube has really leaned into news and current and podcasting and current events. You may have heard the term that the last election was in the United States was the podcast election. YouTube really embraced that, which told me as somebody who paid attention to the company and reports on the company that they're really actually interested in news and getting information and being a player in that space. There's also some journalists who are making a lot of money on YouTube doing really cool and interesting things. I mentioned during my panel yesterday, Pablo Torre, the sports journalist, who basically is using YouTube to do long-form investigations. Cleo Abram, who's a science journalist, is also using YouTube in a really fun and interesting long-form way. And I emphasize this because, we think, we read a lot of articles and you hear a lot from experts, and it's baked into this question, this idea that people just want these short-form video clips, and that's the only thing that they're really paying attention to. And we're kind of doomed because people's attention span is totally gone. And I think that that's actually really not supported by the data at all. If you look at, we see this in the YouTube clips from our podcast. People are locking in for like 30 minutes, an hour of these things, which is crazy. But I think that it also lends itself to a lot of really interesting and cool possibilities. So I think, I don't feel as cynical as this right here. I think that people have actually shown that they really want to engage with long-form content, and YouTube is providing a really good platform for that. And I think that, I guess I'll say in conclusion, I think that the answer to this is going to be solved by many of the people in this room. I was around during I got my first job in journalism during the kind of peak Facebook, social media kind of boom. I was hired at Business Insider as a kind of breaking news reporter doing basically quick churn kind of aggregated stuff. And it taught me the really interesting language of the web and the way that people were consuming news, which was very different than the old school newspaper reporting or old school kind of magazine reporting. And so, I thought that was a really cool way to learn and engage with this stuff. And so I think that, in conclusion here, the folks in this room are going to answer this question by doing cool things on the platform. Don't look down at your audience if they're on TikTok. Make cool stuff that they're going to enjoy there. So thank you guys so much.